Welcome to the Vegan Pulse, the podcast where compassionate individuals from around the globe share their personal journeys into veganism and discuss their ongoing efforts to promote this ethical lifestyle, with your host, Nancy Arenas.
Welcome to the Vegan Pulse, where we share stories from people all over the world. Today, my guest is Stuart Evans. Stuart is a fervent advocate for environmental philosophy and animal liberation. He has dedicated his professional life to driving success and fostering positive change within communities. He has served as the visionary founder and director of the Environmental Alliance Project CIC. This collaborative endeavor engages private, public, and third sector organizations, along with community and activism groups, to inspire action and drive environmental change through networking, collaborating, workshops, conferences, assemblies, and seminars. Let me introduce him to you. Hi, Stuart. How are you?
Not too bad, Nancy. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Nice to have you on the show. Tell me where you're from, where you're at right now.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I actually am in Brighton in the UK, sort of down on the south coast.
Oh, very good, very good. And how is the vegan scene there?
Pretty good, yeah. All across the south coast, we've got quite a few little vegan eateries. You have to work your way a bit further up the country for it to become, really quite popular. In London, there's quite a bit more. Bristol, a few over in Southampton as well. But yeah, around here we've got a few little hot spots which I'd like to go to.
Okay. Now, tell me about your journey into veganism. How did you get to being vegan?
Oh, so it wasn't for quite a while in my life, really. I've been vegan just over 7 years now. So I started, like many others, with a sort of cognitive dissonance, looking at the world through a particular sort of lens and looking at animals more as objects and resource, and sort of thinking, oh, okay, well, I like dogs, I like cats. But it was a very sort of cursory glance at my own sort of ethical code of conduct towards it. So about 8 years ago, I was scrolling on Facebook one day, and one of the sort of the random things that came up on my feed was a clip from, I believe it was Dominion, about how they slaughtered a cow. And obviously, for those who have seen it, it's quite a visceral, quite a very real. It is live footage of a cow being slaughtered. And something in me just snapped, and I was like, "What on earth did I just watch?" It was very, very far flung from what I had envisaged or imagined in my brain, the sort of the process of my food getting from farm to plate. It was there, very. I'm seeing something which I can say living. It's a cow, and I go, "Oh, this is interesting. What's going on here?" For it just bang, for it all to happen. I don't want to sort of go too deep into it because it was quite a graphic representation. But yeah, that was the sort of the first earmarker of like, wow, what is going on in the world? About a couple of months after that, I was having a debate with a friend over fox hunting. And not that they were sort of advocating for it, but I was saying, I can't believe what they do to these creatures. We just sort of like use and abuse them, and we just do whatever we want to them. And at that time, I was actually eating a steak, and I sort of looked down at my plate, and again, it sort of something just clicked, and I went, "Oh!" And that sort of the images of the cow came back, and I'm like, "Well, hang on, there's something in me here." And I'm the sort of person that likes to analyze things, and even then, before my journey, I was very much critical of my own actions and thinking, well, what am I doing in the world? How can I make the world a better place? Very sort of social justice oriented, maybe not for the animals. So at about July that year, a couple of months after that, I decided, right, I can't support eating meat. I'm going to go vegetarian. And my dad had been vegetarian for about 25 years at that point. And I said, Dad, what got you into it? And he said, well, I used to walk down a long road, walking to school, and I always used to have the cows in the pasture follow me down this road every morning, and I got to know the cows. And one morning they all disappeared, and he chatted with the farmer and said, well, the cows gone. And he said, well, they've gone into your plate, lad. And it's like, oh, and that's what spurred into vegetarianism. So I thought, brilliant, I'm doing the right thing. I first came across a cow, and now I realized the problems with eating meat. And then a little while later, I saw images of the dairy industry and the egg industry in my feed. And I'm thinking, right, okay, so it's not only meat, it's everything else associated. So, 7 years ago, or 7 and a bit years ago now, I saw veganuary sort of just starting to sort of like come around the scene. I thought, oh, what's this thing? Vegetarian? Oh no, it's vegan. Oh, okay. Well, let's give veganism a go. And yeah, been hooked ever since. Really, that was sort of my journey into it, and haven't looked back since. Really.
Wow. Um, we just don't make that association. Like you said, I thought I loved animals, and I was like, oh, here's the cat, here's the dog. I used to go to the aquarium. There was I was living in Brooklyn, and I used to go to the Brooklyn Aquarium, and there was this beluga whale. Alex was her name, and I'm like, oh, I love Alex, and I used to go. Again, in Prosper Park, where I lived, there was a zoo, and I used to go because I loved lions and everything. And I thought, this is how I'm showing my love. I'm just going there to see them. But truly, if I'm showing my love, I would never visit one of those places. So it's, and the story about your dad walking down the road, the long road, you hear that story about all the individuals saying, oh, when I used to go to school, I had to, walk 3 miles and hop on whatever. And then you're talking about your dad walked down this long, and then you said, and the cow used to walk. So it was a different story. And it was just kind of a cool story to tell. And the reason why your dad went vegetarian. So now tell me about the Animal Alliance Project.
Yeah, so the AAP, just sort of saying all of it again, AAP was built around actually a project that I had going on, which was the Environmental Alliance Project, or EAP, which sort of helped to connect communities. So how the AAP came about was basically based on the same model that EAP was. And essentially, a bit of backstory here for you. In October of 2019, after about a decade of working in sales and sort of retail and a bit of business development in the music industry, so it wasn't like terrible, quite fun. I doing my hobby and my passion. I thought I'm going to go somewhere. I was going to go on a sort of like a semi-sabbatical. So my now wife and I decided to go to Australia in October of 2019. And
2019.
October 2019, and then in March 2020 we got slapped back to the UK. But no, in that time, we came across lots of wildfires, and we came across lots of the the issues around the pandemic and zoonotic diseases and all these sort of other things that were kind of going on in the world. And I thought, wow, I feel like I want to do something about this, but I have no idea what I do. I just feel impassioned to do it. But obviously all the industry is shut down. So my wife and I applied to do a university course over COVID because, we thought, well, we don't know what's going to be going on. So I went and did a philosophy degree in Winchester. And it was a great course. Obviously, there was nothing specifically to do with the environment or animals per se, but I managed to dedicate a lot of my time and energy utilizing the modules and sort of making it more animal and environmentally specific. And during that, we had obviously a lot of these sorts of calls, even with people in the local area. So I was logging on and with lots of different calls over Zoom and Teams and Google Meets and stuff, and being like, well, hey, I want to be involved in the environment scene because I feel like I want to do something to better the planet. And I got to talking to lots of local organizations in that area. And I quickly found that people didn't really know each other in the local area. They were just sort of going, really, really heads down and focused on their one project, which is amazing. But I'm like, well, you must know so-and-so. And they're like, no, I've never heard of them. I'm like, hang on, there's a real like problem in the movement. People are duplicating efforts in so many places and feeling like the world is on their shoulders. And there's people out there that are doing similar or almost identical projects that could help each other and not sort of duplicate these efforts. So I set up the Environmental Alliance Project, EAP, as a sort of like a networking and collaboration platform, but also myself and my services in like business development got turned more into like activism development and sort of like community building and community resilience and sort of advocating for community-based solutions in sort of local geographical areas. That could also bring in, wider afield larger organizations that have the experience and that sort of thing. And that went on for a couple of years. We did a few climate assemblies that helped inform local policy at sort of a county and a district level, which was really cool. But my heart was still for the animals. Like that was the main passion. So just recently in August of 2023, I sort of tentatively started the AAP, the Animal Alliance Project, being like, oh, well, what can we do for the vegan? And we're still just sort of really moving on from that, really. So I've had a great little team behind me in AAP to help build that sort of network. And actually, in a couple of days' time, I don't know when you're going to be releasing this, but in a couple of days' time, I'm going up to the Vegan Animal Rights Conference in Manchester. So they'll have people from like Direct Action, they'll have people working from a community base, a grassroots base, more of an organizational base, like food technology companies and sort of like plant protein companies. We're all going to be kind of gathering in this little conference, and I'm going to be doing a bit of a speaking event. But that'll be like the official launch, per se, of like the Animal Alliance project. So it's going to be really, really cool to see how that turns into the collaboration platform of veganism.
I think I saw your Environmental Alliance Project website, and I thought that's such a cool idea about bringing people, kind of a networking, B2B kind of a thing, business to business, where you introduce people to other people. So that way, as you said, you could collaborate and expand the movement with a little bit more support and a little bit stronger energy, because you have so much more that you can bring together. I think it's an awesome idea.
Thank you. I mean, the other good thing behind it as well is that the general public can go onto this platform and be informed and know that the people that they're looking at on these websites are the do-gooders. They're the people that are, relevant to having the movement, rather than just being one of those sort of groups that are in it for the money. Now, the problem that I found in the environment side of things, and that doesn't necessarily correlate to the animal side of things, but especially like in the environment side of things, businesses, corporations, there are very big sticks that governments carry that if they don't have compliance, if they don't have regulation, if they don't have all these sort of checks and balances around like emissions and carbon scoping and that sort of stuff, big stick they'll be beaten with, and there's very few carrots. So that was sort of one area that businesses were like, oh, well, let's just get on this sustainability bandwagon. Let's just get all the things like, let's greenwash, let's tout our sustainability credentials, where they may not have some. So what I try and do in that respect is make sure that people who are on the platform are people who are genuinely doing it for the real reasons. For example, in the animal movement, you see people like Matthew Glover in VFC. Now they're a vegan-facing plant-based protein company that deals sort of like in that sort of fried chicken-esque stuff, and that's the sort of company we'd like to see on AAP, rather than just some sort of bog standard company that happens to have a few plant-based offerings. We want to get, liberationists in both the environmental and the animal rights movements coming on and saying, well, how do we change systems at a very significant and fundamental level? What does revolution look like from an animal welfare perspective, to get it from not just how do we improve the lives of exploited animals, but how do we liberate these animals from exploitation? It's a big cultural mind shift change. But if we get enough people in the same room and there's a big enough voice behind this movement, it's much more likely that people are going to stand up and listen and go, well, hey, there's enough of a remit here that we could actually put our heads together and put something really, really transformative forward, rather than relying on this constant sort of step-by-step, baby step mentality, the incrementalism behind it. We want sort of transformative change.
One of the things I just want to mention before we come to a conclusion was that I saw, in your little kind of snippet of a bio, there was a phrase there that I love, which was expanding the moral framework.
Yeah.
I think that is so important, because it's just about educating and connecting that disconnection that's there between, the flesh on the plate and this wonderful, sentient, living, breathing animal who just wants to love and play and just enjoy its own life.
Hugely. I mean, I won't go into too much detail, but that's a lot of where my research lies, is like, how do we understand our own moral framework, which is usually, from a societal perspective, it's very much human to human. It's anthropocentric. It's human centered. We usually rely on how we treat other people to be our sort of grounding framework. Sometimes we move out into more of like a sentientism based thing. So we look to like cats and dogs or other mammals with sentience. But if we truly want to be sustainable and we truly want to be animal liberationists, we've got to think further. We've got to cast on it further than just looking for a sentience mark. We've got to think from a biocentric perspective, like an organism centered perspective. Like when we look out into the environment and the wildlife around us, what do we think of like squirrels and worms and bats and fish and invertebrates and reptiles and all these other things which we may not have on our moral consideration. And I'm not saying like you should go outside and give human rights to a worm. This isn't the conversation, but how we treat the environment and the inhabitants within that and non-human animals is going to be the biggest hurdle that we have in overcoming both climate change and our relationship with nature fundamentally. So yeah, to expand our own moral framework means to just build and scaffold around these ideas of what it means to be compassionate and loving towards others that may not be human and may not be our immediate companions.
Right. It's like to be able to understand, to open up our eyes, and every time we see a squirrel, a bird, a fish, to connect to them in the level that they are. It's like if they were another race or another, religion or another, you know what I'm saying? Nationality is just like they're like us. They have emotions, and we're not saying, like you said, we're not saying give the fish the right to vote. I mean, it's not
make a difference. I don't know.
Let's not be ridiculous. Let's just talk about the actual ethical, moral concept that they are living creatures who are not here for us to use them however we please, just like we wouldn't take your child because we walked down the block and said, oh, that's a cute child. I think I could use this kid and let me just take him and put him to work, or take this lady and make her, do this, and kind of enslavement.
Yeah, exactly that, exactly. And it's just about thinking differently about how we perceive animals. And a lot of it does come down to the political economy in which we live in. It comes down to the idea of how society treats people at the ultimately the end of the day. And the test bed of how badly they can treat people is how badly we can treat animals in the environment. Like, we can only persecute people to the extent that we do is because we are not standing up for the animals kept in arguably more consistently worse situations, like exploitative animal agriculture or deforestation, or fish, industrial fishing operations. There's just so many ways that we exploit animals that you can see direct correlates in the prison system, or in the way that slaughterhouse workers have extremely high rates of suicide, depression, and PTSD. We only treat people in the ways that we do because we treat animals in the way that we do. And I think if we start to break down that relationship and those systems of exploitation, we'll start to understand more significantly and more beneficially our own way of understanding of how we should treat others.
I definitely believe that a vegan world is a more compassionate, kinder world for everybody. Not only that, but we heal our planet and we can all coexist in a loving manner, and changing our views, the framework, again, of our morality is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the food would be much better as well.
Yes, right? So any last thoughts that you want to leave our viewers with?
Oh, I guess this is going out to the preaching to the choir, really. But I guess some words of resilience and some words of hope. Things are changing. There will be days where you wake up and feel like the world is on top of you, but there is a community out there, and just reach out to the people that are doing the good work, and bolster them, let them bolster you. Say words of kindness to each other. I guess that's the biggest thing. Even if you come up with someone who has a great deal of resilience to the cause that you are trying to put out into the world, return back with kindness. I think that's the biggest thing, because a lot of the time it comes from a place of fear. Their words of anger come from a place of being unsure as to how the world is going to turn out. Climate change is a very real thing, and fallout from that is a scary concept. So for those who aren't maybe as in the know, just return love and kindness.
Very good. I love that last call out to individuals to just, start with kindness towards everyone. Yeah. Well, Stuart, thank you so very much for being on the Vegan Pulse, and we'll talk again.
Thanks so much for having me, Nancy.
Thank you for being with us in this episode of the Vegan Pulse, where we continue to share stories from compassionate people worldwide and their journeys into veganism and their current efforts to support, promote, and forward this journey into veganism for the animals, the planet, and our human health. Until next time, remember, if you have a pulse, You have a purpose. Live vegan.
Thank you for joining us on Vegan Pulse, where we've shared remarkable journeys and ongoing efforts of compassionate individuals worldwide. These stories inspire and empower, urging you to embrace a vegan lifestyle and contribute to a more compassionate, sustainable world. Remember, your choices matter, and together we propel the vegan movement forward. Keep advocating, making a positive impact, and pulsing with compassion. Until next time.